am so excited about today's topic, how women over 50 can fix burnout for good. Now, this is an age old question. How can we do that? I have an expert to talk with me about this issue that many of my clients bring to me. And it's going to be really great to get someone who's worked in this field and actually understands about rest and the power of the pause as a specific strategy for burnout. For those of you who I haven't had the chance to meet, I'm Dr. Geneva, founder and CEO of Dr. Geneva Speaks. Now, with decades of leading organizations, raising over $100 million for business and community causes, and establishing 50 public private partnerships, there have been many times that I've been overwhelmed, stressed out, burned out. Today, one of the things that I do is to help women over 50 who are in leadership positions get out of their overwhelmed, stuck state and become confident creators of a vibrant life where every chapter is better than the last. And so the subject of being overwhelmed, burnout is near and dear to my heart. But why this particular guest? Oh, yes, Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith. So I was doing some research on rest and the power of the pause because I was asked to speak to a group of African American women leaders. And this was the topic. And um, it was a very significant topic because everyone was into it. And during the conversation, I mentioned that I had come across Dr. Smith's work, and the response was incredible. There was this tremendous interest in understanding rest more comprehensively and learning actionable ways to implement these rest types in women. Okay, I didn't waste any time. I found a way to bring her here, and she's here with me today. And so we're going to talk with the expert, Dr. Smith, about rest and the power. Come on up and join about the power of rest. And thank you for being here, Dr. Smith. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you for the invite. It's my honor.
Yes. So let's jump. I want to jump right into it. Can you start off by explaining to us the 7 types of rest and why they're essential to overcoming burnout? And also, Dr. Smith, how does this differ from the typical just get more sleep?
Yes, I think we have to begin with just our concept of what rest is. Too often we think of rest simply as cessation or stopping. That's why we think, oh, if I go to sleep and I get 8 hours, then I've rested. However, rest is more than just cessation, it includes restoration. That's the part of rest that most of us are missing. And it's evaluating what parts of ourselves have been depleted so we can then see what exactly needs restoring. So the question I oftentimes ask people when they say they're tired or they're burned out, what type of tired, what type of burnout, what type of fatigue do you have? So there are 7 types that have come out in the research that in our work that we've done. They include physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, social, sensory, and creative. And once you identify the type of rest that you need, then you can be very intentional about the restorative activities or processes that you implement during your pause.
Oh, wow. So that's a whole different way of looking at rest. What you're saying is it's just not about getting enough sleep. So, why do you believe that rest might be that missing key for high achieving women, especially those over 50? How can rest help them break free from the burnout cycle?
Yeah, it pours back into the place where they are depleted. And so, for most women who are high achievers, they have a productivity mindset. They have an excellent work ethic. They're not
Mhm,
the people you have to coerce to work. However, they are the people you sometimes have to convince they need rest because they have seen work as more valuable than the rest. They're not evaluating how the rest actually helps them to perform the work at a higher quality and at a better level and with greater satisfaction. Because what I find oftentimes with women in those positions, they have great successes as far as productivity, but they don't feel successful because they don't have any time for reflection. They don't have time for joy and for really just having moments to even pause and sit back and enjoy the success that they've developed.
mhm, mhm. So you talked us about 7 types of rest. Could you give us a quick synopsis of each?
Sure. So physical rest is probably the easiest to begin with, but it has two sides to it. It does have the passive side, which is sleeping and sleeping is important. However, most of us don't get high quality sleep, the type of restorative sleep we want, because our bodies aren't rested enough to be able to go into high quality sleep. So, the second aspect of physical rest is active physical rest, which are those things that improve circulation, lymphatics, drainage. It's everything from a massage to a leisure walk to using a foam roller or a massage gun on your body to help relieve tension, to even the ergonomics of your workstation, just how your screens and your monitors affect your chair affects your body at your desk. Mental rest looks at clearing the mental space. So when someone has a mental rest deficit, they tend to have difficulty with concentration. This is a person who maybe they're laying in the bed and they're exhausted, but their brain won't turn off. They're thinking
Mhm,
all the thoughts. It can also be when someone has difficulty recalling information. So the person who says, "Why did I walk in this room?" or "I can't remember the details of that conversation." A lot of them aren't necessarily having early dementia. They have a mental rest deficit. Their brain has been trained to catch and release, so to speak, and not actually hold on and remember information. So we have to retrain ourselves to be able to clear the mind and actually do some practices to help to our mind be able to get into a clearing state.
mhm,
Spiritual rest deals with our motivation and our inspiration behind things. It has a faith component if that's something you believe in, and for those who don't, it tends to frame itself around belonging, acceptance, looking at the ways that you
mhm,
engage with humanity. So even those without a faith-based system can experience spiritual rest in ways like volunteerism, being involved with causes that help them to see outside of themselves and help them to be able to experience the good feeling of doing good in the world. We then move over into emotional rest, which looks at how well are we able to express ourselves and the freedom to express ourselves and be authentic. A lot of us experience emotional rest due to, I don't call it people pleasing, I call it
mhm,
professional emotional labor. Because if you're in customer service, we don't call it people pleasing when you don't yell at the person who's yelling at you. However, there's an emotional stress attached to that. So
mhm,
professional emotional labor, a lot of women who are in elevated positions experience that. They deal with hard conversations, people management. They have to hold sometimes their own emotions back when they are in acquisitions and mergers and all the different things that can come up. And
mhm,
so that stress is not something we tend to understand that needs to be released because we fear releasing it in our home because we don't want to take our work home. But we do have to have places and people and situations where our emotional backpacks get unloaded and we
mhm,
able to experience the rest associated to that, which is emotional rest.
mhm,
Social rest is looking at the people in your life. Majority of the people in your life are negatively pulling from your social energy. Doesn't mean they're negative people, but like your coworkers, your family, if you have elderly parents, all of these people need things from you. I think it's important for women who are in these positions to evaluate who is in your life that does not need anything from you, that is
mhm,
life-giving, that can pour back into you. Who are the people you can reach out to just when you want to have coffee or to have a chat and you don't and there isn't any expectation placed upon you. That's
Yes.
the social rest that we're needing. And then
Mhm.
the final 2, sensory and creative. Sensory rest
Okay.
is looking at the sensory inputs, everything from how noisy is it around your workspace, how bright are the lights, how do you feel when you're in these loud, bright situations for long periods of time. A lot of us experience sensory overwhelm syndrome. We have
Mhm.
irritation, agitation due to just the onslaught of sensory input we experience. And so we need moments to downgrade that. If you're like me and you spend a lot of times on planes, I do a lot of consulting and speaking, so I spend a lot of time on planes. Planes have an intrinsic background noise and hum. You can
Yes.
hop off a plane you sat on for 6 hours and feel completely exhausted. You're not
Mhm.
physically exhausted, your body has been still in that spot. You might be physically have a physical rest deficit in that your legs haven't had great circulation, but you
Mhm.
almost definitely have a sensory rest deficit because all of that noise, even though you've zoned it out, to zone it out, your brain had to process it. And so a simple
Right.
tactic could be just putting noise cancellation earphones on, where you're not
Mhm.
listening to anything. You're just actually quieting the sensory input so that you feel more rested because you haven't been processing all
Mhm.
this information. And then
Mhm.
creative rest is looking at what motivates you creatively. It's not doing the work of creativity. It's not painting a picture or doing pottery. It's actually appreciating the beauty that's already been created and letting that
Mm.
beauty unlock creativity and innovation inside of you. We have a
Mhm.
lot of people with creative rest deficits simply because we creativity is much further than art. You use creative energy when you problem solve. So if you are in a
Mhm.
leadership or C-suite position, you're probably problem solving all day long. And
Right.
so you're using a lot of creative energy in that way. What are you doing to pour back into that area?
Mhm. Wow. I have just gotten a completely different perspective on rest and the different ways that it can be approached. It just opens up a whole new way that you can tackle these deficits. But speaking of the rest deficits, because you talked about that, how can you identify what
Yeah, that was
specific rest deficit you might have? Are there certain signs or symptoms?
absolutely. Each type of rest has its
Yeah.
own specific symptoms, and that's that. I'm an internal medicine physician, so that's how I function. You diagnose the problem before you treat it. So we developed a free assessment at restquiz.com so that
Ah,
people can actually take the assessment, determine which of the 7 types of rest they're most efficient in. They get a score in all 7 areas, so they can then pinpoint where they need to begin. Sometimes someone is burned out and all 7 could be deficient, but you can't eat the elephant. You can't just start and then try to fix all 7. So pick the
right.
one where you have the greatest deficit, begin doing restorative practices in that area. And even the restorative practices differ. Some people with mental rest might benefit from traditional meditative practices or mindfulness practices, whereas somebody else, their therapy, so to speak, or treatment for a mental rest deficit may be jogging, which seems
Mhm,
like how could that be rest? It's not physical rest, but sometimes when someone's out jogging, that repetitive process or bicycling,
mhm,
they're thinking about their breathing, their cadence, that rhythmic motion can lull the brain into a quiet state. So we have to
mhm,
start approaching rest, really individualizing it so that we find out what works for our body and what gets us back to a healthy place.
mhm. So I wanna get that URL again. Can you
Yes,
tell us?
very simple. Restquiz.com.
Restquiz.com.
Mhm.
Fabulous. Dr. Smith, what advice would you give women who feel guilty or unproductive when they're prioritizing rest? So if they take a break or look at these various options that you talk about, but they say, I feel guilty. Or how can you shift your mindset so that you see rest as absolutely critical?
Yeah, I totally get that because that's how I am. That's the reason I burned out. That's the reason any of this even started for me. I am the type of person who I started this journey thinking that rest is what you do when you can't keep up with the rest of us. And
Mhm,
so when I burned out, it's like, now what's happened? It took
mhm,
me some time to realize that I spent the majority of my life, I am when you're someone who is able to produce, you learn how to produce out of your emptiness. And that's what I find a lot of people are doing. They are showing up, they are producing work, but they're producing work out of their emptiness and not out of the best version of themselves. And then when you keep producing without having the benefit of producing your best work, you're not satisfied. You're not satisfied in the work because you know you could do better. And you're not satisfied in what in the process because you're not allowing yourself a chance to even appreciate and experience the process. You're just moving through it. And so what I tell women in that situation is I look at it as you can be the mosquito or you can be. The mosquito is buzzing around and getting work done, but the work they're producing is irritating everybody else. And typically a woman in that situation has the tendency to be irritable, especially if her hormones hit, it's even escalated,
Mhm.
not
Yes.
sleeping well, nothing seems to be going right. And then you get to an age and you're like, why did I do all of this? Then you
Mhm.
have the bee who is doing a bunch of work, but what they're producing has a sweetness to it. That's the life most of us want. We want the life where we are productive and there is still a sweetness to that life where we can enjoy it. And you have to stop long enough to be able to taste the sweetness of a life.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, yes. I love that analogy using the mosquito and the bee. And certainly we would want that sweet life, that vibrant life where we could have both. We can
Absolutely.
influence and impact and take care of ourselves and come out of our best selves and give our best work because we're in alignment with ourselves and we're getting the kind of rest that we need. I appreciate you so much coming and sharing your wisdom with us. And I know as a board certified internal medicine physician, and you're also a work life integration researcher, speaker, and you've got a best selling book, Sacred Rest: Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity. As a final question, what would be the advice that you would give to your younger self about rest?
I love that question. I think about that often because I think things would have been very different. The advice I would have given myself before the burnout is to not build a life that doesn't feel good to enjoy. I had built a life before the burnout that looked extremely successful on the outside, but did not feel successful to live. I was running all the time, couldn't enjoy my family. All of my health went sideways. Nothing was moving in the right direction, but I was producing a lot and it looked highly successful from the outside. And what I realize is true success isn't about what it looks like on the outside, but what does it feel like to live? And so that is what I would have told myself because once it felt good to live, it got even better on the outside. So I think that would be the advice.
That is so wonderful. And we appreciate you so very much. And I definitely want a part two and part three. And the women that I talk to about you will be ecstatic knowing that we've had this conversation that I can share with them and hopefully many more. Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith, physician, researcher, author, and an expert on how we, in fact, can learn to live the life that we all want. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and insights.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. We have learned an awful lot, haven't we? Oh my goodness, about rest and the whole aspect of looking at it differently. I can't tell you how many times I have talked with women leaders, run into women executives, coach high achieving women who talk about being overwhelmed, stressed, and this whole notion of rest being a strategy is significant, but not just rest, the different ways to look at rest. Because what it provides is an incredible opportunity to figure out what areas that you might need more rest in. Expand our perspective of what rest means and what it is gives us many more opportunities to create activities and strategies and tools in these various areas. It isn't, oh, I haven't gotten enough sleep. No, it might be an emotional rest deficit or a social rest deficit or a creative rest deficit. I'll tell you another thing. There are people that I have run into my life, perhaps you have as well, who I think are life force drainers. They just suck the energy out of you. If we're constantly in the mix of expending our energy, like problem solving, or having our energy withdrawn from us, that's stressful. That causes overwhelm. And that's a rest deficit. So we need to remove ourselves, better navigate those situations so we won't be in rest deficit. Just an extraordinary way to look at rest. I remember one of my most tremendous experiences with um, burnout was when I went home to my mom. I had gotten married, moved to a new place, never been before, never imagined my place that I'd live there. But the man that I met and loved was from this urban city. So I moved there and started a new career, had my first child, was a mother, and all of these things, trying to get my career going and being the best mom, and of course, the baddest wife ever, trying to do all those things. And I guess I was experiencing deficits in all of them categories. And one day I couldn't move. I was at my job and went to sit at my desk and couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. I just sat there and I forgot where I was, and I felt my heart racing. And I said, "Ooh, this is a problem." And I went to the place where I could always get my answers, and that was to my mom. And I just went on and on about what I was going through and all these things that were happening to me and the challenges and all of this. And when I stopped, I looked at her for this fantastic solutions that she was going to give me, this great advice. And she just looked at me and said, "Gigi," my nickname, "I'm sorry you're putting yourself through that." It was like cold water thrown on my face. I didn't expect her to say that. What she was saying was all that I was going through, putting it to all that out there that was happening to me, it was really me doing it to myself. And that aligns so much with the conversation. We do an awful lot, and we too often forget that we need rest. And so that we don't take the time that we need to for ourselves to rest and grow in these various areas that in fact can make a difference, and that we work hard, and we've got this productivity mindset that if we don't do this work, that if we don't continue to produce, that if we don't keep grinding, then we'll be less than, we won't be achieving that. And the whole point of the matter is that you've got to have that balance, that you can deplete yourself, and that it's not sustainable moving in that kind of way. Pause for a moment, and here are 7 different things that you can look at, 7 different ways that you can eliminate your rest deficits and turn them into assets. So that's what we want you to do. And I invite you to take the next steps to really think about how you can reduce or eliminate the rest deficit that you have. Now that you know that it's not just about getting enough sleep, go do something about it. Go take the quiz. Join us at .com. Elevate nextlevelsuccess.com, where every day we are talking tips and tools and strategies and giving practical advice and insight on the issues that affect midlife women. We're always focused and passionate on making sure that you're a confident creator of a vibrant life where each chapter is better than the last.